Pokémon is a series of video games developed by Game Freak and published by Nintendo and the Pokémon Company. The core games of the franchise are released in generations, each with different Pokémon, storylines, and characters. Additionally, all new Pokémon games add new Pokémon species or forms, add new moves, add new abilities, add new Pokéballs, take place in a new region, have different protagonists, have a different story, and update visuals and sounds. So, let's take a look at the release timeline over the next few minutes. Just as a note, for the sake of brevity, we won't be covering additional core games such as Yellow, Emerald, or Platinum, or any remakes like Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Pokémon Red and Green, 1996. Pokémon Red and Green were the beginning of what would become a nationwide phenomenon. These games were released on the Game Boy in Japan and debuted the very first 151 Pokémon. The game featured the core mechanics of capturing, training, and battling Pokémon. The ultimate goal, as for many of the upcoming games, was to defeat the Pokémon League and complete the Pokédex by capturing all 151 Pokémon. Pokémon Red and Blue, 1998. After its initial domestic success, Pokémon hit the shelves around the world. Pokémon Red and Blue were more or less the refined versions of the original titles, also released on the Game Boy. The more polished versions of the game featured the same mechanics and the same Pokémon list as the first titles. Pokémon Gold and Silver, 2000. Nintendo's Game Boy Color was a revolutionary product and allowed Nintendo to expand their Pokémon core games further. Alongside a fresh, colorful new look, an additional 100 new Pokémon were added to the game. These games also split the Special Set into Special Attack and Special Defense, allowed Pokémon to hold items, introduced the Dark and Steel types, and also introduced shiny Pokémon. Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire, 2003. By 2003, Pokémon was ready to release a new generation of Pokémon on the Game Boy Advance. This generation introduced 135 new species of Pokémon to the franchise. The region map, along with the towns, were noticeably more detailed. This game also introduced 2 vs 2 battles, as well as Pokémon natures and abilities. Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, 2007. It was time at long last for the Pokémon franchise to make its first appearance on Nintendo DS. The console's dual-screen functionality prolonged the development process for the new title, but a new generation of Pokémon was more than enough to make up for it. These games also introduced online battling and trading, as well as being able to run in buildings, which made things a lot easier for players. Pokémon Black and White, 2011. Though this wasn't a console upgrade, it was about time to release another generation. The 5th generation of Pokémon added 156 new species of Pokémon. New battle types were also introduced, like Triple Battle and Rotation. Pokémon Black and White also introduced a more complex storyline with a different formula than we were used to seeing in the other games. This is also the first game in which sprites were fully animated. Pokémon Black 2 and White 2, 2012. Pokémon Black 2 and White 2 was the first time Nintendo released a back-to-back sequel in the following year. This game held a brand new storyline, though the game mechanics stayed the same. Pokémon X and Y, 2013. The move to the 3DS, combined with the new generation of Pokémon species, made Pokémon X and Y a breath of fresh air. Alongside new faces, the game also brought many customization options, including choosing your hairstyle, clothing, and skin color. Pokémon X and Y was also the first title to fully feature 3D graphics. Pokémon Sun and Moon, 2016. Also released on the 3DS, but debuting with 81 new Pokémon species, Pokémon Sun and Moon changed the storyline's core characteristics in the Pokémon games as well. Players had grown accustomed to defeating all 8 gyms before being able to take on the Elite Four, but Pokémon Sun and Moon changed that. The storyline of the game requires players to complete trials before they could challenge an island's kahuna. Pokémon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, 2017. Pokémon Sun and Moon got a sequel only a year after its release. The Ultra variation of the title featured an alternate storyline with new characters and Pokémon species. Pokémon Sword and Shield, 2019. Pokémon Sword and Shield were the first new core games on the Nintendo Switch, and introduced the 8th generation of Pokémon and impressive 3D mechanics to the series. The new Max Raid battles and Dynamax evolutions switched up the usual Pokémon game formula as well. Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, 2022. Pokémon Scarlet and Violet is the latest core game to be released into the franchise. Pokémon Scarlet and Violet largely follow the same basic gameplay structure of the previous Pokémon games, with a few differences. Scarlet and Violet have open worlds, which include both urban areas and open wilderness without borders between the two, unlike previous installments. In addition to this, progression through the games is up to the players, with 3 routes available to choose from. So, that's a very basic timeline of the Pokémon games. Which generation has been your favorite so far? Let us know in the comments below. I'm Marissa Jenkins with AAA State of Play. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.